to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, time!
3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you on this Friday. Glad to have you with us and along for the ride. Looking forward to it. Todd Leary will join us here in this first hour, and UCLA comes to town tonight, so there's plenty to talk about there. The Daytona 500 is on Sunday, and guess who is on the pole? Chase Briscoe from right down in Mitchell, Indiana. Pretty cool deal when you think about it. He switched over to a new team. First race out of the season, the biggest race of the season, and snatches the pole. And man, I watched that. He was fast. He was fast in the old Martin Truex 19 machine for I guess that's Joe Gibbs Racing, right? So pretty cool. But, yeah, we'll talk about that. Of course, some coaching search. Not really much to talk about, really, is there? But how can you not talk about it? Appreciate everybody joining us, no matter where and how you're finding us, whether it's on one of our great affiliates like 97.7 ESPN, The Ref, always the right call, down in Evansville, or up in the region on the voice of the region, 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, WJOB, and, of course, in Fort Wayne on Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. Keep it locked right here. No reason to go anywhere else. Hope your week has been a good one because it's over. Get to head to the weekend. You got the IU game tonight, which is this new Big Ten scheduling, it's hard to get used to. It's weird to think about a game on a Friday night. I think about that, and I think about high school games. And, yeah, there's just a college game every night of the week, which it's a little unfortunate. It's fun to watch, but at the same time, you got to let the high schoolers have one night a week, you would think, but not so much. Speaking of the Daytona 500, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has a car running, and it qualified. Finished, I think, ninth in the first of the duels last night, the 125, the 2125s. So congratulations to them. That's a pretty cool deal. But, man, Chase Briscoe, that's pretty cool. He was here racing at the Bloomington Speedway last summer. We've had him on the show a couple of times. We'll get him back on. But I think it's going to be a heck of a year for him. So congratulations to Chase Briscoe and his family. He had a new baby in between the time he was here and or did they have twins? I can't remember, I think. So all kinds of great stuff. But looking forward to getting to talk with Todd as we do each week. And Cheryl Sizemore. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and Brick and Ivy Realty. Now, the commercial today won't sound just like that because we're still working on the quick changeover. But Brick and Ivy Realty, Cheryl Sizemore, and you can reach her at CherylSizemoreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore Sells at gmail.com. Just wanted to throw that out there because I know the commercial's not changed over yet. So, but we want to make sure that you know and are aware of that. Poke the bear. Which bear am I poking? I don't think I said anything yet to get it going. IndyCar in St. Pete in 16 days. Wow. There you go. I didn't realize they were going to get going. John says he hasn't paid attention to NASCAR since his guy Bobby Labonte drove the 18. Well, that's been a minute. So that's going back in time. It looks like Mike is having a birthday. Congratulations. Oh yeah, Helio Castroneves in a stock car as well. Pretty kind of cool. He will race in the Daytona 500 as a matter of fact. So yeah, getting some IndyCar mix over there. And which is I always like to see that because we're going to see Kyle Larson run the Indianapolis 500 again this year. So, and then I think that there'll be a little more of that as you go further in. NASCAR needs it desperately. They don't have stars. IndyCar has stars. People know who these IndyCar drivers are. Whether it's Pato O'Ward or Joseph Newgarden, Helio Castroneves, these names are so familiar, and NASCAR is not what it doesn't have the stars it used to. You know, back in the day, it had all these big names that all had personalities. Now it just seems half of them are, they look like they're 20 years old, man. Some of them are, but hey, talent's talent. I get it. IU at UCLA, Simon Scott Assembly Hall tonight, 8 p.m. on Fox. UCLA currently favored by 1.5. I tell you, UCLA has not played well east of the, I think it's east of Colorado, but east of the Mississippi. It's not their, it hasn't worked out. And I cannot buy the fact that it's the travel. That doesn't work for me because other teams have done it. We've seen it happen in football. It's just they've gotten beaten. Now, UCLA would really, of course, they'd like to win it, but they kind of need, I don't want to say need to win, but they're sitting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th. We're tied for 5th and 6th in the Big Ten at 9-5, 18-7 overall. So they have no problems with tournament resume. They're fine. Hell, they're 13-1 at home. Now, away from home, they're 3-4. That's where their problems run in. And I would surmise that those 3 wins came at Oregon, at Washington, and at UCLA. I mean, at USC, rather. If I had to guess. And they had won 7 in a row until they lost their last game. And so now they're on a 1-game losing streak. Can Indiana add to that? Coming off of a gigantic win up in East Lansing, in which they played extraordinarily well for them for what we've seen. The lineup was different, and I would expect, or I should say I would expect to see the same thing again. It's ironic that it took this point to get there. That's what I don't get. Indiana's made the announcement that they're going to make the change. Now you start doing the things that everybody on the planet Earth had screamed about. It's weird, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and looking forward to getting Todd Leary in here and hearing his voice instead of mine. A lot more experience and knowledge on the inside of the game. We'll look forward to it. Back on the other side from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this beautiful Friday.
At Ben Davis Chevrolet and Ben Davis Ford in Auburn, we're your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. We have the area's best selection of over 300 vehicles, including new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Plus a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles in stock. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We also have top-of-the-line service and parts, plus a collision repair center, and we're competitively priced on everything. For sales, service, collision, parts, and more, we do it all. Come see us today or visit us online at BenDavisChevrolet.com and BenDavisFord.com.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-701-0838. 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore help you find the home you want today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday, and that means a visit from myjumpshot.com, the captain, Todd Leary. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you? Sun's shining. It's cold as all get out, but it's sunshine.
It looks good out there, but it looks good
cold
on paper. But let me tell you, the first thing I did letting Hank out was, Alexa, what's the temperature? 12, and I'm like, what? That's
on your own this morning, Hank.
Yeah, I said, see you, brother. But it's a good day out there. We hit the end of the week, and I'm still not used to this having a game Friday night. It's hard it's hard to get into that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's tonight. But it's not just a game either. It's a big game. It's a big name game. Indiana and UCLA. I think this is the first time UCLA has ever played in Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Is it really? Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, Bob Knight was not a fan of John Wooden back in the day because he
won a lot.
I think it was more about how he acquired his players from his good buddy there. I forget the guy's name. That they had it going before anybody had it going. His money man. But, that's well-known, a very well-known story. But anyway, a lot going on. Indiana coming off a huge win, and, of course, it comes at Michigan State again like it did about 4 years ago, which was crazy. Michigan State is not – and you've called this, and I think about it all the time, but they're not as good as where they were sitting at the top all year long. They're not as good as Michigan, and they're not as good as Purdue. That's no doubt.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not asking for the credit or bragging, kind of.
You've already got it, man. You've already got it.
But, I mean, if you watch them play, and, I consider myself, if you can define an expert at it, I'm only an expert because I watch a lot of basketball. I watch a lot of college basketball. And watching that team, if it weren't for Coach Izzo, that team would be under 500, in my opinion. Like, he's he's gotten the most out of those guys, and their schedule was a bit soft. They won a couple of games that I think surprised a few people, surprised me early on, and that was great. But you can only do that so many times, and they just can't shoot the ball a lot like Indiana. I kind of thought it might be one of those games where one of the teams doesn't get to 50, just because both teams don't shoot the ball very well. I'm not trying to pick on them; the numbers don't lie, and they're they were ripe to be beat. I think I said it on the show a few weeks ago, like they're going to finish with 5 or 6, maybe even 7 losses now when the Big Ten's done. And it's going to come down. I'm surprised Illinois really got hit by, the bug of they had a bunch of illnesses. They had some injuries and all of that. I still believe the top 3 teams in order are Illinois, Purdue, and Michigan. And I think those are the best 3 teams in the Big Ten, but you still got to go out and play the games, and that's why Purdue and Michigan are sitting up there at the top right now. They're winning games that you need to win. But I saw that stat last week about Michigan and Dusty May have won 5 games in a row by 4 points or less. Like, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're winning the tight games. They're not giving up games that they could easily. Well, Indiana had that issue with Maryland and Purdue.
Yep.
And that would have been extraordinarily valuable. Well, hell, think about what that would have done to Indiana's season. They would probably very possibly be at the bottom of the tournament bracket right now had they gotten those wins over Purdue and Maryland, especially if you add in the fact of the potential of getting another Q1 win over UCLA tonight, which I think this is a toss-up game. Indiana has every chance to win this game.
Yeah, they really do. The tail of the tape, I think, tonight is going to be, if UCLA is able to impose their will defensively and make it a rock fight, Indiana's in trouble. And even though Indiana likes to score in the paint and all of that, getting good quality shots has not been, it's not been Indiana's strong suit over the last several years. And I'm not just talking Mike Woodson era, like over the last 10 years. I think they've struggled to have guys that, can create for other people and create for themselves. And so this is a UCLA team that prides themselves on defense. They're going to play a lot of help defense. They're physical. It should kind of play into Indiana's favor. Like, Indiana matches up well with UCLA. It's just, I think the Big Ten gets credit for being a physical team a lot. But there's a lot of teams that come in here and try to prove their physicality, and I think UCLA is going to be one of them.
Yeah, and Mick Cronin has he's found something to complain about all season long, whether it's his team, the travel, the officiating. But I guess it worked because his team was going through a funk, and then they kind of came out of it. I think they won 7 straight until they lost at Illinois just the other night. But they don't have any luck winning back east, Todd. I think they're 0-5 when they travel, and their conference wins have come mainly over on the road, at least at Washington, Oregon, and USC, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's kind of proving, that travel from west to east is, you can use a little bit of the travel and all that. I think a lot of it is the newness of playing in the Big Ten, playing in these new arenas. Although I think there's been maybe at least 3, maybe 4 teams that have traveled east to west and gone out there and swept all 4 teams out there. So,
I don't know what goes on there the last couple of days, but
I think it's the teams.
We have internet surge, I think. But Todd,
can you still hear me?
Go right ahead. Yeah, you got you, brother. Go on with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just I don't necessarily think it's the travel as much as I know it's difficult. He made a big point about, when you travel out there, you get to play, UCLA and USC back to back. You don't even have to switch hotels. They're 10 miles apart. I get that side of it, but at the end of the day, the teams that are better are going to win. And I think the teams that have gone from East Coast to West Coast have been better teams, and that's why they've gone out there and had more success than those guys coming to the East Coast.
Brian says UCLA shoots around 35% from three, which that's, you're going to take that in today's game if you've got a guy inside. Michigan State had no answer for Indiana's inside game, which that was pretty much the only game that they had, really. But what is UCLA? What do they hang their hat on?
They hang their hat defensively on just making it really tough, trying to make every possession difficult to score. And, like they're the contrast of Iowa. Iowa tries to outscore you. UCLA is going to try to keep you from scoring very many points. And offensively, they're decent. Like, they don't play super slow. But, I mean, they're also definitely not an up-tempo, fast-paced team either. And so this could definitely be a rock fight. This could be a game both teams don't score 60. And if it is, that's the game UCLA wants. I think it's advantage UCLA if this is a low-scoring contest. If Indiana can get up into the 70s, I think they got a much better shot at winning this one.
Yeah, and Indiana now, oddly, after the announcement that the change was coming, Mike Woodson seems to have found a different way of his lineup. He did not start Malik Renew. He did not start Miles Rice. Now, I don't know that Rice doesn't start again, but not starting Malik Renew, finally, not going with the two bigs, was something that gave Indiana, I don't want to say an advantage, but it gave them something Michigan State couldn't handle. Luckily for Indiana, those guys weren't in at the same time because they both were kind of in foul trouble. Ballo fouled out. But Mike Woodson was able to stagger them in there, so he kept bringing somebody in that was just beating up on Michigan State on the inside, and that seemed to work for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I did. It'll be interesting to see. I think late in his 4-year tenure at Indiana, I'm speaking for him, and I don't know this at all, but I mean, I think he's kind of seeing maybe the fun part of coaching and getting to tweak your lineups. I think this is what Coach Knight used to do a lot. He used to tweak the lineups a lot and try to find what's working. And, I think one of the biggest differences in Todd Leary's opinion of the difference between the NBA and NCAA basketball is, the best 5 players, the most talented 5 players are not necessarily the ones that play the best together on the floor. And in NCAA, I think that proves itself out all the time. That's how you can get, guys like Braden Smith, who are not barely even 6 feet tall, to be one of the best players in the country. And that's very much more difficult to do in the NBA. And so I just feel like Mike Woodson might be enjoying the part of the lineup right now or the job right now where you get to play with the lineup and you don't have to put the McDonald's All-Americans out on the floor in order to have guys play well together. And I honestly feel like I think he's probably seeing a little bit of that right now.
Yeah, and so they played, Tuesday, I guess, against Illinois.
Yep.
So I'm assuming they just stayed back east for the rest of the week.
Yeah, you would definitely assume so.
Yeah, especially with the complaint of travel. There's no way that he's going to be going back. So what are you expecting in this game?
Yeah, I expect it to be a low-scoring, both teams. It might be one of those 10 minutes into the game that, it's 8-6. That's what I'm expecting. I hope I'm wrong because that's not my favorite type of game to watch. I'd rather them both be flying up and down the court, and I hope Indiana outscores them, at the end. But UCLA is not a great three-point shooting team. They're not a great scoring team, but they're capable of doing it. If you can get them, they've all – I know it's not the same thing as what it used to be, but, they've all grown up watching Assembly Hall as well. Like, it'll be a little bit of a unique experience for all of those guys coming in here. And so a lot of them were probably recruited by Indiana. And so it'll be an interesting time. If Indiana could jump out early, I think they have a much better chance. If this is a rock fight and it's a slow game and tough to score, I definitely think the advantage goes to UCLA.
What does Indiana need to do and have to do to win this game?
I think they've got to come out and establish offense in the first half, like pretty quickly. This is not a team you want to try to come back from. Indiana's not built as a team that's going to be great at coming from behind. UCLA is definitely a team that plays better from the lead and can just try to make every possession difficult. And so I think Indiana's going to have to shoot the ball a little bit better than they did at Michigan State. I think that, I think UCLA is a better defensive team than Michigan State is. But, they're also not invincible. And if you can impose your will, I think UCLA was able to get out and run a little bit. And when Illinois was able to get out and run a little bit against UCLA. And if you can do that, if you can force them to play your way, you have a definite advantage. If Indiana can force them to play faster, Indiana has a definite advantage in the game. And then shooting the ball, it's going to come down to that again, which it does every week. When you're not a consistent, good shooting team, that becomes one of the keys almost every week. And I don't think it's any different this week.
Yeah, Indiana, they didn't have anybody. I guess Malik Renew was actually the star of the last game with 19 points. And he missed a bunch of early bunnies. He could have really boosted that up. But he goes 8 of 19. Again, all of that coming inside. What's UCLA like defensively on the inside? What are they going to offer?
They're good and big and physical. They got, I forget the guy's name. It's kind of a French sounding name, I think, or whatever. But I mean, they've got some big guys that, UCLA is comparable in recruiting to Indiana. Like it's they probably out west battle the argument of, are they still a blue blood? At one point in time, they were the blue blood. There was only one blue blood in the whole world, and it was them. And they were the originator of it. And so, that's never going away. We say it about Indiana. I say it about UCLA too. Like this is two programs that are trying to get back to dominance the way that they, dominated. Dominated may not be the right word, but they were consistently competitive at a national level almost every single year. And both these teams are fighting to get back to that, back to that status. And I think, Mick Cronin, I think he's a guy that's built some. He's been there for several years. They had some really early success going to a Final Four, really early on. Tough loss to Gonzaga that year on almost a half-court shot. But, yeah, I mean, they had really early success out there with Michael Lewis as one of his assistants. Program, they kind of have an identity. I can tell you what it is they're good at and some of the things they struggle with. So, yeah, Mick Cronin's done a good job with that program. And they're a couple of recruits being really, really good again.
Indiana was able to win that Michigan State game, like you mentioned, without shooting the three-point ball very well at all. They went 3 of 13 in the game. Of course, that was not nearly as bad as Michigan State's 4 of 23. Those two teams combining to go 7 for 36. That's I think I could shoot that, man. And I'm terrible.
When you're bragging about 3 of 19 or whatever Indiana was, you're the tallest midget in the world at that point. Like, yeah, I mean, this was just a battle of two teams that are not. Yeah, sorry, whatever. They're just not good at shooting the basketball. And Indiana won the battle of being the less bad shooting team.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think they can count on that every game. You don't want to hang your hat on that.
It reminds me of the movie where they were making the plan to break the people out of the Iranian hostage situation, the movie that they made, making the fake movie. And he said, this is the worst plan that we have. Or something like that.
This is the best terrible plan we could possibly come up with. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just trying to have the other team, hope the other team shoots poorly is not a great strategy and a consistent one you can win with. But hey, you know what? I don't want to take anything away from it. That's a tough place to play, and they went in there and got the job done. And everything was lined up against Indiana to win that game. If Indiana had lost, we would be blaming it on all of the things that, the new coaching thing Indiana's going through, and then the Tom Izzo breaking Bob Knight's all-time record. Like, we would have given the credit to those factors, and Indiana was able to overcome that and get a win. So I'm not making any excuses for it. They did a great job with that one. it's time to stack them together. I hope that's the theme of the team right now, is stacking good performances together, because they had a good performance even though they lost at Purdue. And I think everybody felt still okay with the effort that was put out on the floor. And then they came back the next game, laid an egg, and the effort looked horrendous. So, I don't want to fall back on that. Let's give them the credit. They did great at Michigan State. Let's just stack some good performances together and defend Assembly Hall. And, that's at some point in time, this program has to get back to teams really, really fear coming to Assembly Hall. Right now, teams look at it almost like an exhibition tour. They get to come here and tour the facility and see it and walk out with a victory. And that's not where this program needs to be.
Nope. And we'll talk about that, as a matter of fact, in the next segment. Joe Hillman was on with us yesterday, and Joe definitely has his thoughts and is not afraid to show them and did so, but not in any bad way, just telling the truth. This is what you want, what to expect. The program is not where people want to be, because they want to win, and there's no reason that they shouldn't want to win. That's what the goal is. That's why you do whatever it is you do in life. If you're working, you're still, the goal is to win by being the best you can be, or selling or achieving, or whatever the case is. It all comes down to that, at least in my estimation.
You're cutting out. Sorry.
Oh, my bad.
I don't know if you're going to break or not. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Well,
okay?
I need to anyway. Yeah, let's go ahead and hit a break. We need to do that. When we come back, we'll talk about the other side of things on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios with the great Todd Leary from MyJumpShot.com. If you are a kid, know a kid, have kids, or maybe yourself that needs some work on basketball fundamentals, or just all-around parts of your game, go to MyJumpShot.com and get that done. We're back with more here on ISB Radio right after these messages. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum, Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Maria in Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Maria in Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theuglygrouper.com for more information. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com.
At Ben Davis Chevrolet and Ben Davis Ford in Auburn, we're your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. We have the area's best selection of over 300 vehicles, including new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Plus a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles in stock. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We also have top-of-the-line service and parts, plus a collision repair center, and we're competitively priced on everything. For sales, service, collision, parts, and more, we do it all. Come see us today or visit us online at BenDavisChevrolet.com and BenDavisFord.com.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios on this Valentine's Day. Happy, man, I cannot believe. Thank goodness I've already sent a text to my daughter, but I did not want to be the first Valentine's Day wish go to Todd Leary from me. But you're going to be the second person. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, brother.
Hope you remembered. I hope you remembered, more importantly.
I definitely did. Miss Jessica got her Valentine gifts this morning before I left for work. So, yes, we're all set there.
Look at you go. Look at you on it.
I was on top of it for one. I planned ahead. I don't do that very often, as you know.
Man, that's impressive. Impressive. I got to give you flowers for that. No pun intended.
Yep.
Hey, man, I know you're not a big race car fan, but NASCAR, Chase Briscoe is from Mitchell, Indiana. He's on the pole in the Daytona 500, man. Means nothing to Todd.
He's from Bedford?
Mitchell, actually.
No kidding. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did not. Hey, this is the kind of thing when somebody is from that close to home. That's the thing. That's one of those things that can make you start, following it and watching it and sometimes fall in love with it. And I don't follow it at all, but I will, now that I know Chase Briscoe's from that close to where I live, I'll definitely keep track of it.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, literally like 20 minutes down the stinking road, and this guy's on the pole at the Daytona 500.
I call everybody from down there hillbillies anyway, so they might as well be NASCAR drivers.
Yeah, that's right. I think he races for Joe Gibbs now. This is his first season and first race for the new car. Man, they started out well, so pretty cool. It's a pretty cool deal. I enjoy watching. Yeah, like you said, especially people that are from around there. It's wild to think that. Neat. I sent out a tweet that I maintain that Lawrence County is the fastest county in the world, on the planet, because you have three astronauts from there, and then you add the pole sitter for the Daytona 500, Chase Briscoe. Kind of wild. Gus Grissom is also from Mitchell, one of the most famous astronauts. So
I think Chase Briscoe's speeds bring down that average quite a bit.
Yes, you are correct on that. A little bit. That's like averaging 80 points a game and then having to go into a game and not score.
Yeah,
it's going to hurt it a little bit. Speaking of averages, Indiana, their average has not been all that great in the hiring process of new coaches. And they're back to that coming up again. This one's kind of weird. Last year when the football position was open, it was 3 days between the announcement and of letting Tom Allen go and the announcement of Kurt Cignetti being the next head coach. That's not going to be the case here. We're going to have about 6 weeks.
Well, yeah, it's mid-season. It's mid-season, so definitely not going to be the case.
I would have to think there are advantages there to having that time to be able to really sit back and look at things, because I know a lot of people may think that Scott has one guy in mind. Well, then that's not the case. He can't have one guy in mind. He's got to be ready for plans B, C, D, and maybe even E. You look at teams last year like Kentucky, Louisville. They didn't get their first choice. Ironically, look at both of them doing very, very well with how they ended up. I mean, Dusty May was destined for Louisville. He ends up at Michigan. I don't know. Even though I think that's a dream job for him, I don't know that I see him leaving Michigan, especially if they win the Big Ten title.
I don't have inside information on that one, even though I am friends.
No,
with
I know. I'm just your opinion.
No, I'm just going to say, like, I hope that that's not the case. I don't think that would be the case. I don't I think the fact that he's only been there 1 year is an advantage for Indiana. I do believe if he's offered that job, I think he would take it. And that's me just looking at all of the facts, of where he's from, how much family he has here. Now, if there were other factors involved, like, I said last year, it's unfortunate for him with the timing of being at Florida Atlantic and Jim Larrañaga, because with Jim Larrañaga's age, obviously I didn't know he was going to step down in the middle of the season this year like he did. But I think Dusty would have been the main target for the University of Miami last year had they been on a coaching search like they are now. With Dusty being so close in Florida Atlantic, heck, he wouldn't have had to move out of his house. He could have stayed there and coached Miami. And I thought that was the job that might keep him from coming back to Indiana for a couple of reasons. One, the convenience. His kids have grown up down there. They've been down there.
Miami.
It's the most beautiful place you can imagine. I mean, there's so many factors that I could have seen him making that his lifelong home. I could be speaking out of turn here and saying I doubt that in 1 year at Michigan they have a deep-rooted, feeling for being in Michigan. I'm sure they love it and things are going great, and I'm sure they're the toast of the town. But I just don't think that would keep you from your dream job. I think winning the Big Ten is more of a reason why he would leave. Because, how are you going to – they're going to have a fairly new roster after next year as well. He's going to have to do close to the same thing at Michigan that he would have to do at Indiana. And, his wife's family still lives here from what I understand. I know a lot of his family still lives here. And so it would surprise me if he's offered that job and turns it down. I don't care what happens at Michigan this year. I don't care if they win a national championship. It would surprise me if he's offered the Indiana job and he turns it down. He's never I don't think he's ever going to have that. You can't ever bank on getting that opportunity again.
I agree with you. I just cannot imagine him turning the job down, which I know it's going to be probably the hardest decision he's ever had to make, just because, I forgot I left that one up there. Russell was not, he didn't care. Let me tell you why he didn't care for Valentine's Day. I think it was because maybe he didn't get the, how all the kids used to,
you traded all the.
But you could tell how popular you were by how many of those
candy.
Valentine's things you got. And if you were probably like me and got 4 or 5 out of some mercy gifts and been like the people like
teacher.
you.
I got one from the teacher, one from the teacher's aid.
People like you had a box full of them. And I got mine in my back pocket.
I was a buck-toothed little nerd.
I was
sure. But I mean, grade school was kind of – that's what I remember most about Valentine's Day, to be honest with you. That tells you I'm not a super romantic. But, I mean, I remember those days back then of having to carry in all the treats and getting all the candies and all the little stuff. Like, that kind of was the introduction to Valentine's Day back in grade school. But, yeah, it's a weird dynamic. I don't know you can get away with that as much in today's world as you did back then.
You can't get away with nothing in today's world, man.
Nope.
It's
everybody gets the same amount
world.
of Valentine's gifts.
Yeah. Well, the ruling did come out about the Department of Education changing their ruling on Title IX that has no bearing on the revenue sharing. So it's not going to be an issue. And I cannot wait to see how that helps Indiana football. That's going to help Indiana football more than Indiana basketball. They don't have any problems with NIL right now. And that is what makes this job so attractive. Now, or that's one of the things that makes this job so attractive. It has every resource available. It has great in-state recruiting built in. It is a program of tradition and power. Now, yes, they have not been good for a while. No consistency. But let me tell you, it's a sleeping giant. Do you think that if Dusty May or someone of his ilk, Chris Beard, it doesn't matter, can go to Florida Atlantic, can go to Ole Miss and do what they're doing there, that they can't do that in Indiana? It just hasn't been the right guy. And I think that changes this time around.
Well, it has to change this time around. And Indiana, the Indiana job, like, people need to sit back and kind of look at the big picture. Take the Indiana job out of it. Like, let's look at the factors that go into what makes a job attractive to coaches. And there are, what are there? A half a dozen, maybe a dozen coaches across the country that are at their destination job. Like look at Tom Izzo. He's not leaving and going somewhere. Mark Few at Gonzaga. He's proven he's not leaving and going somewhere. Danny Hurley's probably not going anywhere. Matt Painter's probably not going anywhere. Like you look at guys like that, like you're not enticing them away from their job. And it's almost silly to even consider them into the situation. But when you look at every other coach, like Indiana, I mean, you look at their record right now. I'm not trying to stir anything up there, but like North Carolina is a possibility of being an open job this year. Like they're underachieving, I think, for their standards.
It's probably going to be open. Iowa might be open.
Yeah, but Iowa's not in that same category. Like North Carolina is in that category. Like Indiana is in that top shelf, level one. I don't care. The fact that their record has been bad is more enticing to a coach. He can turn it around. Like he can be the reason why it gets turned around. He can turn himself into a legendary, name at the university. And if, someone that goes to, in Iowa, like Steve Alford was a good example at Iowa, in my opinion, like, that's a stepping stone job. Unless you get a guy like a Fran McCaffrey, a guy who, is a lifer in that area. And it sounds like I'm trying to insult them, but I'm not. But that level of job is just not the same as Indiana. And Indiana, forget the fact of all the resources that they have NIL-wise and what they're able to offer a coach that comes in. This is a fan base that, is in the top 5% of fan bases. Now, top 1% of crazy fan bases, and I'm in that category. So I'm not calling anybody else out. Like, we're all crazy about it. Like, we think about it way too much and talk about it way too much. But, like Indiana's job is a dream job for 98% of the coaching population. And anyone who says different than that is crazy. The money they will pay somebody coming in here is going to be a top level money situation, and so they're going to have all the tools and resources possible. They're going to have to deal with crazy fans. They're going to have to deal with high expectations. And look, coaches don't look at that as a negative. If the expectations are low, that's when things would be subject to other coaches might have question marks about it. But Indiana's not in that category. And so it's a dream job for 98% of the coaching world. And let's just hope they pull off a miracle. And I'm not even letting myself go down the route of thinking, everybody's number one person for that job, which it has been the last three hires, would consider it. But you never know.
The funny thing is, Dusty is without question. He has to be the, I don't want to say the leader in the clubhouse, but he has to be number one on Scott Dolson's speed dial. One would think. Common sense would tell you that, because he's the relationships, he knows the program. He has been successful. He's shown that he is successful at two different places in a short period of time. And so I'm not trying to pick on you, Philip. Here, I just saw a comment that said the Final Four was, aided by something. Man, you to get a school like that to a Final Four.
What was it aided by? What was it aided by?
And within a last-second shot of going to the title game, now you go to a 3-17 Michigan program. They were 3-17 last season. He's got them in the lead of the Big Ten. So somebody else asked about proof. I'm like, man, he don't have to prove jack to anybody. He's done that. There's no doubt about his coaching chops.
Honestly, what he's done at Michigan this year is, to me, impressive. More impressive than what he did at Florida Atlantic and taking them to the Final Four. And I say that because he's done it in 1 year, and he had to do what a lot of coaches are considering the most difficult thing in the world is right now, and that's rebuild an entire roster and get these guys to play well together. And he did that. He's going to have to do it at Indiana next year. Probably going to have to do it for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And he's proven he can do it. So I think what he's done at Michigan this year put him into, Brad Stevens is always going to be everybody's number 1A. He's my 1A. He's everybody's 1A at Indiana. And that might be silly because he hasn't been in college basketball for a long time. But I don't care. He just seems to be a basketball savant genius to me. And,
he is.
And so we're all going to say that it's probably unrealistic. So I think the guy that's put himself to the top 3 category with what he's done this season is Dusty May. And hopefully there's a couple other candidates, a couple other Curt Cignettis out there we don't know about. But Dusty May has definitely, with what he's done at Michigan this year, I wanted him to be the coach because he's a great dude. Like, he's just a good person. He understands what Indiana basketball has always been about, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And he knows that. He wants it to be back to that. He knows how to get it to that. So I think he's at that top level. What he's done at Michigan this year proves another level to me that if it's not Brad Stevens, for me, you can't miss with Dusty May. I'm not saying he's the only guy you could hire. I'm just saying I don't think you could miss with Dusty May.
Now, with IU fans, your average fan off the street, at least I know that they started a poll on the Hoosier.com, and it is an overwhelming desire to have Chris Beard. And I mean, not by a close margin. So that I don't see that happening because, well, first of all, because I think Dusty does get offered the job, and I think he takes it. But I just don't know that they'll go that route. But my God, boy, wouldn't that be that is not it's hard to go. They're two very different choices, but man, the path that both would take you on would possibly end up at the same place, just going down a different way to get there.
Well, and I'll just say that Chris Beard has been, like, I've had him on my radar for a long time. I like the way he coaches. I like the way his teams play. I understand there's outside baggage and that kind of thing. Those are the things that, I don't think we know the full story of that. And that's what, the athletic program, if they're considering him a candidate, they're the ones that need to find out all the story to that. And I don't think we'll ever know that. But there is no question that he can coach basketball. And I think his allegiance to Coach Knight and his continued allegiance over the years, it's unwavering. It's never changed. He's always mentioning Coach Knight and referencing him and wearing stuff on his shirt. And, he's for a guy that didn't play for Coach Knight, he's about as close as you can get to being an Indiana guy. And so, I honestly believe that he and Dusty May are in a little bit of a higher category because of their allegiance to, at the end of the day, I did not know Curt Cignetti's name before they, were interviewing him. And I don't think I could possibly be more pleasantly surprised, not just with the results. I was lucky enough to meet him in Scott Dolson's office, about a month ago. And he was just as impressive in a 5-minute meeting as I wanted him to be. It's one of those things you don't want to meet your heroes because you're afraid, they'll disappoint you. I wasn't disappointed in meeting Curt Cignetti. I was actually more wowed, and I sing his praises more after I met him. And it wasn't because of a whole lot of what he did or said. Scott Dolson explained to me, and this is, I told you it was a month ago. Like, this is in January. The season's not going on anymore. Like, this is definitely the beginning of the off season for them. And he was in at 4:30 in the morning. He was watching film. He actually walked in with a list of things for Scott Dolson that he had come up with on a film and things that Dolson needed for him. And he had done it super early in the morning. And the guy checks every box. And there's a Curt Cignetti out there in the basketball world. And if it's not one of the big names that we all love and want, Dusty May, Chris Beard, Brad Stevens, then I hope they find that basketball Curt Cignetti.
Definitely, because if you do, you have you go from
if you do, Scott Dolson wrote his ticket to be the AD until the day he dies or the day he chooses not to be the AD.
And the Indiana Athletics Hall of Fame.
Yes,
and probably the Indiana Hall of Fame.
The very top of it.
Because you're right. He will have done what nobody has done in the history of IU athletics. Yeah. And that is having IU basketball. If he can get IU basketball being just, what they should be, I'm not saying that they're going to be what they were.
Consistent top 25 team. If they get them to be a consistent top 25 team, and the football team is a consistent, they don't have to go to the national playoffs every year. But if they're a consistently ranked top 25 team, and the basketball team is too, those teams always make the tournament. Like, top 25 teams make the NCAA tournament. So that's basically what I'm saying. If they can get back into that category, if Dolson's responsible for getting Indiana back to that consistent category, his picture goes at the very top of the Indiana Basketball Athletic Hall of Fame.
Well, yours is at the top of our Hall of Fame, brother, and appreciate you as always. Hope you have a great Valentine's weekend with Miss Jessica.
We will do that for sure. I'll tell her you said that. She'll appreciate it.
Please do. We've got to take a break. More coming up. Zach Osterman on the other side on this Valentine's Day edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios. We're back with more after these messages. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Realty at cheryl@indyhomepros.com or 317-701-0838. 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore help you find the home you want today. Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33 Pizza. Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue. And you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios on this Friday. It's also a game day for Indiana, and UCLA, the only game in the Big Ten on this Valentine's Day. UCLA and Indiana at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, much to Mick Cronin's chagrin. That's live on Fox. I believe Gritty said that Mr. Hummel is on the call. This week in the Big Ten, Purdue lost at Michigan on Tuesday. UCLA came east as well and lost at Illinois, but that's not a bad loss there. Indiana got the win over Michigan State. Can they keep riding that? We'll find out. USC continued their magical run as they blitzed Penn State 92-67. And let's see. Iowa, they get a win over Rutgers. Rutgers not the team we were expecting this season. Washington, they get blitzed at Ohio State, who Ohio State's going to end up being a tournament team. So Indiana now with 2 wins over two teams that they have beaten that will be playing in the tournament, they can make that 3 tonight with UCLA. I mean, the Ohio State win was there, but I didn't think they were going to make it for a while. And then they added the win over Michigan State. That really helped them. If they can get this win over UCLA, man, you just looking backwards is ridiculous, and it does you no good, but it's hard not to look back at that Maryland game and the Purdue game. Within reach of making that happen, both of them would have turned the season around for Indiana. It wouldn't have changed the course of what's happening at the end, because they still would have, if they made it in, barely made it in, which is not acceptable for an estimated $5 million payroll. And it's not acceptable for you can just tell the program has no juice. It has no momentum. It has no consistency. It's missing so many things. Well, you heard Joe Hillman say it yesterday. I mean, no one can say it better than someone like that who has lived it, who knows it. Let's see. Maryland. They went to Nebraska and picked up a win. That was on Thursday, last night. That's a huge win for Maryland. Nebraska had been rolling. They had been rolling along. Now in the standings, Michigan at the top still, half a game over top of Purdue, followed by Michigan State. They're going to drop severely. Not like out, but then you've got Wisconsin right behind Michigan. Michigan State is going to start picking up losses, as Todd said, and I've acknowledged. But Michigan State is 12-1 at home. That's Michigan, Purdue, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. Michigan's undefeated at home at 12-0 right now. Purdue, Michigan State, and Wisconsin, 12-1. Maryland, 14-1. UCLA, 13-1. Those are the top top six teams in the Big Ten have lost no more than one game at home. That's what you have to do. You protect the house, and then you go out and get you some road wins. Now, obviously, UCLA Maryland is 3-5 on the road, so they're not doing the grace. But also those top six teams, at least they are all 7-3 or better. Michigan, Purdue, Wisconsin, and Maryland are 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're winning 80% of their games, people. UCLA and Michigan State, 7-3, 70%. Then you drop immediately below that. Illinois, Ohio State, and USC, in order, are all 5-5. 500. They're playing 500 ball, man, that you can't move up or down, but you're not going anywhere. You're spinning your wheels of sorts. Zach Osterman, the IU insider for the Indy Star, joins us now. Zach, how's your week been, brother?
Hey, how we doing?
Pretty good, brother. How's it going with you? Chilly out there today. It's hard. I can't get into the fact that there's a game today. It's like school or something. It feels odd.
Yeah, Friday night Big Ten games. I'm still not used to them. I'm glad we at least aren't doing much Monday night Big Ten basketball, but Monday and Friday just don't feel like natural days for Big Ten games. But here we are.
Absolutely. And Indiana with another opportunity. They've had many of them here of late. They took advantage of that last game out in East Lansing. East Lansing must be a special place for Indiana. I hearken back to when they had lost 13 straight under Archie Miller, and they went up there and beat that top 10 Michigan State team inexplicably. I'll never forget that. And then this was kind of that same feeling watching that game. They were making the tough shots, the right shots. They were making the plays. It was odd to see everything go their way and hit free throws down the stretch. Anthony Leal, who's a 50% shooter, hit a pair at crunch time. And, of course, Mackenzie Mbako, he missed just one out of, I think, 8 maybe or 6. I can't remember. I think it was 5 or 6. But, they just did the things that they needed to do in a hostile environment. So now they come back home and play a team that has not played well on the road, especially back east.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the reason, I mean, I didn't predict Indiana would win against Michigan State, but I didn't think they'd get blown out either. And it's for the same reason that I did think they would lose comfortably at Wisconsin, which is Wisconsin is not a good matchup for Indiana. Michigan State is. And, you know, the Spartans don't shoot the ball well. They don't turn teams over. A lot of their efficiency comes from their ability to rebound the ball and create extra possessions and then limit other teams' possessions with how well they rebound the ball defensively. But Indiana wasn't really going to be, you know, I guess for lack of a better term, susceptible to that at the level that a lot of teams are, because Indiana had bigs that were stronger and bigger and more skilled than the ones that Michigan State could throw at them. And, you know, Michigan State, Jackson Kohler's a really good rebounder, but generally speaking, Michigan State is more of kind of a gang rebounding team. And, you know, Umar Ballo is kind of like a one-man antidote to that. And then you obviously have both the size and skill of Ballo and Renew, different kinds of post players, but both of them very effective. And both of them, I think, coming away with double-doubles in that game it tells a certain story. I think it's fair to say. And I bring all that up because if you look at UCLA, and you're right to point out UCLA does not have, I think the last time I retweeted this stat earlier, I can find it for you.
I think they're only 5.
UCLA has not beaten a Division I team away from the West Coast since February 26th, 2023. In fact, and this is from Brian Roth, who is a senior national writer for Heat Check College Basketball and does Sleepers media stuff. In fact, the Bruins have not won a game in either the Central or Eastern time zones since December 17th, 2022. So to your point, like, they don't travel well. They just don't. And, you know, they played Illinois fairly tough. I mean, I think Illinois led, you know, kind of by double digits for a lot of that game, but it winds up within 5 at the end. But they've clearly struggled on the road. If you look at their Big Ten numbers, you know, frankly, a lot of those numbers have kind of come back to earth, you know, in terms of some of their efficiency and stuff. And that's what will happen when, you know, I mean, they had a stretch where they lost 5 of 6. But the other thing I would say to talk about matchups, UCLA doesn't shoot the ball great. It shoots it better than Michigan State, but doesn't shoot it great. And they'll be on the road rather than at home. They don't rebound it very well. The one thing they do is turn teams over really well. They are really, really good at turning teams over, at creating extra possessions for themselves while limiting the mistakes that opponents make.
Located on 325 acres in Butte. Whoops. Sorry about that.
You're right.
Yeah.
No,
accidental.
they while limiting the mistakes that they make. With Michigan State, it was all about kind of winning that battle on the glass. And you saw the game turn as soon as Indiana stopped getting beat on the offensive glass. With UCLA, if Indiana can limit turnovers, this is another one where the matchups and also just recent history, UCLA's recent history on the road, would suggest that this is an opportunity for Indiana here tonight to potentially pick up another big win.
Yeah, and as crazy as it sounds, they still have an outside shot to get the accomplishment of making the tournament. Now, it's an outside shot, but they have enough opportunities, I think, that if they can take advantage of them, they can get there. The close games over Maryland and Purdue, while not counting as a win, it opened some eyes to people. Hey, this team is probably more talented than they have played. And now Mike Woodson is adjusting his lineup to potentially give Indiana a better opportunity to achieve this as well. The other night, of course, against Michigan State, did not start Malik Renew, did not start Miles Rice, but Malik Renew ended up being the star of the game. Indiana, the leading scorer, and could have scored more, missed some easy early shots, but that seemed to work out very well for Indiana, and it's something that a lot of people have been wanting to see anyway.
Yeah, I will be curious how Indiana starts this game, because the flip side is this is a game where I think Indiana actually could bully UCLA if it goes big and stays big. I think UCLA is not a huge team. I mean, their front line goes 6'6", 6'8", 6'9". Again, they are not a good rebounding team at all. They don't get fouled enough, and they commit too many fouls. They are 12th in the league in Big Ten games alone in offensive rebounding percentage. They are 13th in opponent offensive rebounding percentage, which means that they're getting beat on the offensive glass as much as they're getting beat on the defensive glass. It can be tricky because bigs can be more susceptible to turnovers, but on the other hand, if you slow a game down, and UCLA doesn't play that fast anyway, if you slow a game down and you're a little bit more careful and methodical with it, that's a way to limit turnovers. If you're not afraid, if you're not bothered by the idea of maybe trying to win a game, Michigan State, they beat Michigan State in a game that finished in the 60s. They beat Washington in a game that finished in the 60s. If you're not afraid of playing at that pace, then I think if you're Indiana, you have a decent shot. You've just got to limit turnovers and leverage your advantages. Again, one of the biggest ones for me being your size, your ability to rebound, and your ability, it should be said, to rebound. Umar Ballo's rebounding the ball basically as well as he ever has. Malik Renew is certainly rebounding the ball as well as he ever has. The numbers don't say it because I think Renew and Ballo are kind of splitting that up a little bit more. But like percentage-wise, Renew has never been this consistent of a rebounder in his career. And then you're getting, decent help. Like Mackenzie Mbako's defensive rebounding percentage is a career high 15.6. And actually in Big Ten games alone, it goes up. You look at somebody like Luke Goody, who's not an elite rebounder, but when he's on the floor, he's holding his own. Bryson Tucker rebounds the ball well when he's on the floor. Miles Rice, I think, has really kind of gotten into it a little bit more. Again, another player whose rebounding defensive rebounding percentage in Big Ten play is higher than what it is overall, meaning he's performing even better in cleaning the glass defensively against league opponents than in the season at large. So I'm not sure this isn't maybe the sort of game where, as long as your bigs are playing well and not making mistakes, maybe you want a little bit more two big ball. Now, does that mean does that mean you start them both? Do you bring them back in? I mean, I've found it fascinating. There's one of the Ken Pomeroy's tools is the 10 most frequently used lineups over the past 5 games. Normally you see a team that will, that lineup, that first lineup, the most used lineup will be at least like 20 to 25%. That's usually your starting lineup is on the floor, for about a quarter of the game for you, which isn't that much. If you think about it, that's only 10 minutes. We're only talking about, maybe the 4-minute segments at the beginning of each half and then 2 more minutes sprinkled in somewhere else. But Indiana right now has no lineup on that is on the floor more frequently than 11.4% of the time in the last 4 games. It has 5 lineups somewhere between 6.4 and 11.4%, which means that these minutes are getting spread out a lot. And actually, the 2 big lineup is only Indiana's 3rd most used lineup in the last 5 games. The 2 most used lineups have Luke Goody at the 3, Mackenzie Mbako at the 4, and Umar Ballo at the 5. And I bring all that up just to say, I think Mike Woodson has kind of been thrashing around a little bit to try and find something that works. And I'm not sure if maybe Indiana's not at a place where it's a bit horses for courses, if you know what I'm saying. It's this might be a game where it makes sense to try and be bigger most of the time because you want to leverage that rebounding ability. Whereas when we get to a Penn State, that might be a game where Indiana's kind of better off with one or the other. But I think tonight, I wouldn't be stunned to see Indiana with more 2 big lineups, just because, quite frankly, I think you got to make UCLA prove that they can handle them.
Yeah, and they showed how much of a problem they were for Michigan State in whatever order they were in there. Malik Renew and Umar Ballo combined for 33 points and 22 rebounds. That is a lot of mass, and that's getting a lot of things accomplished. They had 5 turnovers between them. That's probably not, you'd like to see it maybe kept at 4 or 3, but that's not horrible either for what they're producing. And if they can get some help,
if you want to think about it a certain way, between them, they have, as you say, between them, they have 5 turnovers, but they also have 5 offensive rebounds. So it's effectively a net zero in terms of possessions gained versus possessions lost. You'd like that number to be a net positive, but at least it basically just zeroes out on the road, and that's, I think, important.
Yeah, and if they can get a little more help, Luke Goody had a pedestrian night. It was okay, 10 points, 3 of 6 shooting, 2 of 4 behind from deep, 2 of 2 at the free throw line. It's not bad. A little bit more, you're probably to win these bigger games. Mbako, he 7 points on the night, and 5 of those come at the end of the game at the free throw line. So if they could get they need a little more help from somebody else to really secure to be to win games, to win these kinds of games.
No, I mean that's fair. And Michigan State was always going to be, you could tell the way both teams were shooting the ball. Michigan State was always going to be a little bit of a scrappy game. I think if you're Indiana and you are, I mean, you bring up Mbako there. If Indiana is going to go on a run here, it really does kind of feel like he's one of the players that's got to go find a little bit of that consistency again. And listen, I don't think he was guilty of much of anything in that Michigan State game. It wasn't like a free-flowing offensive game. I think between them, it was something like 20 assists on like 41 made baskets, which is not, that's obviously not a great number. And Mbako is the kind of player that tends to kind of need to have his shots created for him, at least at this point in his career, for the most part, not entirely, but certainly his spot-up shots. And so it just kind of doesn't wind up being a game for Mackenzie Mbako. But you look at the 5 previous to that, and I understand Indiana lost them all, but in the 5 previous to that, Mbako, I think, has something like 81 points combined. And, he's still sort of searching for his 3-point shot, but he's rebounding the ball a lot better. You bring up his free throw shooting. I'd point out that, in Big Ten play, he's only missed 4 of 35 free throws. I mean, he's almost certainly Indiana's most consistent free throw shooter. It just feels like if Indiana is going to make a run here, and you mentioned NCAA tournament, kind of aspirations near the top of the segment. I think from my perspective for Indiana to get in, I think they probably need to win 4 of 6, just because I think we all learned in Mike Woodson's first season, you don't want to go into the Big Ten tournament needing help because you're just, the committee just can't give that much credit out for wins at the sort of last possible minute. I think Indiana needs to do its work here in the regular season, and I think that means probably winning 4 of these last 6. I think you can afford to lose any 2 of them. Even Washington's not a great loss, but it's on the road, so you can probably kind of live with it. But if Indiana can find its way to going 4-2 down the stretch here, UCLA, Purdue, Penn State, at Washington, at Oregon, Ohio State, then I think Indiana has a reasonable shot of getting into the field. Anything less than that, and they are going to be right up against it going into the tournament.
Yeah, at 15-10, they are 57th in the net. That's the highest they've been for a while, as a matter of fact. And so it shows you how much you can improve, how quickly with a solid win. And Indiana was just missing those. The Michigan State win was probably their best win since beating Purdue a few years ago at Purdue, with Jalen Hutchefino had the 35-point game. It just felt like that was the biggest win. It made, and Joe Hillman thought that they played better against Purdue in that loss, and I think he's probably right. That one is just, man, you look back at that one and you hate to have let that one get away, or the Maryland game, either one, because truthfully, either one of those wins might be enough to really push you towards the edge where you can still make enough hay towards the end of this season.
No, I mean, listen, and I'm fiddling around with Bart Torvik's team cast thing here, and I handed Indiana just like a win and a loss in the Big Ten tournament. Plus, they beat UCLA, they beat Purdue, they beat Penn State, they lose both on the West Coast, and then they beat Ohio State, and that projects them to finish with 10 quad 1 and 2 wins, and it projects them to be one of the last 4 buys, which means they get directly into the field. Obviously, that is not predictive. I mean, I'm making up some of these results, but listen, it's still very much there for them. And you bring up like some of the near misses, and yes, Indiana would be in a lot better shape if they'd finished the game against Maryland, or maybe they'd rescued the game against Purdue. But on the other hand, there are some elements to Indiana's resume that are helpful. Indiana, nobody can really say that Indiana didn't win away from home in the non-conference. I mean, they weren't great, but at least you've got that neutral site win against Providence. You also beat North Carolina in the non-conference. Those aren't great wins, but they are just sort of like they are bricks in the wall. And then they are bricks in the wall of an overall strength of schedule that's top 20 in the country and is top 150 in terms of non-conference, which is not bad. You've got 2 high-quality road wins. At this point, I actually think at this point, Ohio State has a pretty decent chance of making the NCAA tournament. They beat Texas on a neutral floor. They beat Kentucky on a neutral floor. I know they're only 15-10, but I mean, Indiana is probably their worst loss, either Indiana or Pitt. Now you've got a road win against Michigan, so the committee's not going to be asking where are your road wins. The key here at this point is just quantity. Indiana's got to get to a place like, right here, right now, I think Indiana's got something like 3 quad 1 wins. Maybe even just I think it's 3. It's for the moment, and Penn State keeps falling, so Penn State's approaching quad 2. But for the moment, Indiana's got Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan State all on the road. What you need now,
Ohio State stayed so high. I mean, their numbers.
Well, again, listen. I've had this conversation with a friend of mine for a while about how it feels like for the last 8 years, Ohio State's been gaming the analytics, and I haven't really understood how. But what I would say is, again, Ohio State does not have really that many bad losses. You look at their losses. I think they've only lost 3 games by double digits in conference play. 7 to Michigan State, by 2 to Oregon, by 2 to Wisconsin, by 1 to Indiana, by 8 to Illinois, by 8 to Nebraska. They're not getting blown out. They do have quality wins. They beat Purdue. They beat Kentucky. They beat Texas. All 3 of those were either away from home or on a neutral floor. They beat Maryland at home. And I mean, Maryland is much better than I expected them to be. Kevin Willard might be my Big Ten Coach of the Year at this point for the
big win at Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, they looked impressive in doing it. The point is, if you're Indiana, you have a lot of the cornerstones of a good NCAA tournament resume, or at least the sort of resume. I won't say a good resume, but the sort of resume that when you get to Selection Sunday and you're looking at teams on the bubble, and by their nature, you're looking at a bunch of teams that are flawed. By their nature, you're looking at a whole bunch of teams that have problems, because it's really easy to sort of, take the 10-foot view with your team and be like, well, we lost all these games and we let that one slip away, and look what we did in Atlantis, and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, but then zoom out, you want another bubble team. We were just talking about Ohio State. Well, Ohio State lost a home game to Pitt, which on January 4th was 12-2, and Pitt's won 2 games in the last 5 weeks. So you want to compare yourself to other bubble teams, go look what those teams are doing. They do not have the quality of wins that even Indiana has. And so if you are comparing yourself to other bubble teams whose resumes will naturally be just as flawed as yours, Indiana has some really important cornerstones. It's got, it's got a decent non-conference strength of schedule. It's got a really good overall strength of schedule. It's got 3 quality wins away from home in conference play, including 1 now against, one of the best teams in the conference. What Indiana needs now is just quantity. The only 2 games left on the schedule that are not quad 1 opportunities or very close to it are Penn State and Washington. If Indiana can go 4-2 down the stretch here, I think Indiana gets into the tournament. Anything less than that, and I think we're talking about a team that is going to need some real help in Indianapolis. And again, we saw this 3 years ago. That's just not a spot you want to be in, because the committee is not going to weight those games too heavily.
And of the remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, 4 of them are at home for Indiana. But you got Purdue in that mix. the game with UCLA tonight, which I think this is a 50-50 game. Let's see. They've got Ohio State at home at the end of the season. You've got a Penn State team that you've already beaten at home. The trip out west to Washington and Oregon. Yeah, Washington has not been good this year. They're at the bottom of the conference, but it's still this West Coast trip that we've seen people stumble. I mean, it's UCLA has not won East coming East, and so going out there can be a hindrance. Winning one of two of those games would probably suffice, depending upon, of course, what they do. But that could be a tricky spot going out on the road, back-to-back games with that travel.
Yeah, I do suspect if you're Indiana, you'd probably rather have Oregon first. Because Indiana's going to fly out on the Friday. They'll play Washington on the Saturday. My assumption would be they'll stay in Seattle on Saturday night, and then fly to Oregon on Sunday, and then be in Eugene for 2 days. Oregon's a funny team. Like, I don't really know what to make of Oregon. Like, they were 16-3 3 weeks ago, and then they lost 5 straight. Now 4 of those were on the road, but they also lost a home game to Nebraska, and quite frankly, did not look good doing it. I mean, that was like, I'm looking at the KenPom numbers here. Nebraska's minimum win probability in the game was 24%, and that was when Oregon scored the first basket of the game in the first half. Oregon obviously kind of comes back and gets a nice win against Northwestern, probably closer than it needed to be. They were up 14 at halftime and then allowed 50 second half points, which is again, I mean, we've seen Indiana do it, but Northwestern's not a team that you should be allowing 50 points and a half. And that, I said that about Indiana, so I will say it about Oregon as well. My point is, I don't really know what to make of that matchup, but I think if you're Indiana, my personal opinion anyway is that Indiana matches up fairly well with UCLA as long as it doesn't turn the ball over. I think Indiana, I'm not going to say they will beat Purdue, but if you can play Purdue the way you did at Mackey, and you beat UCLA, so you got a little wind in your sails. Now you got a couple quality wins. Now suddenly you feel like you're pointed back toward the tournament field. You should be able, you would think, with a friendly home atmosphere to win that Purdue game. And then all of a sudden, you feel like you're kind of, I don't know, there's a phrase in English football, like you're on the march a little bit, and you've got 3 straight wins. They're all high quality wins. Now you're 17-10, you're 500 in conference again, and you could just kind of start attacking games as opportunities rather than feeling pressure. So it's, I mean, like I said, I've said this a couple times now. I think 4-2 in this stretch gets Indiana in. Anything better than that, I'd be stunned. If Indiana wins 5 here in this stretch, any 5, I think they're fine. Obviously, if they win all 6, I think of course they're fine. I'm not predicting that will happen, but I really do think these next 2, because what you do have to sort of recognize is, Penn State's a quad 2, Washington's a quad 2, Oregon would be a quad 1, and Ohio State will be right on the cut line of a quad 1. But none of those games is an absolutely signature win the way Michigan State is. You punch a couple more, 1 or 2 more, truly sort of high quality wins onto your tournament resume, then you can sort of fill in the gaps with a Penn State or a Washington, something like that. And I think the 3 really guaranteed high quality win opportunities left on the schedule are UCLA at home, Purdue at home, and Oregon away. And then let's see where Ohio State is on senior day. I think that'll be a quality win, but let's get there and find out. I just think that Indiana's got to make hay while the sun is shining a little bit here.
Absolutely. And so for argument's sake, let's say Indiana is able to accomplish the things they need to do to get into the NCAA tournament, which is wild because it wasn't just a game or so back. There was talk of, are they going to make the Big Ten tournament? Kind of getting down there close. But I think a win tonight probably puts that to bed for certain. But if Indiana is able to do the things they need to do to get into the tournament, how does that affect this coaching search? Does it elongate it any? Does it because the coaches that anyone that's being looked at is more than likely going to be playing in the tournament themselves?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think my sense from talking to people around it is that Scott Dolson's biggest intention right now is to move as discreetly as he can, both for the purposes of the job and also because he doesn't want to be a distraction to the current team. You understand both of those motivations. I don't think it affects it tremendously in the sense that, I would be surprised if Indiana hasn't already. I would be surprised if Indiana does not retain the services of a search firm as it did with Kurt Signetti, because you have all this time here where a search firm can go feel out certain candidates for you, get ideas of, is he interested? If he was interested, what kind of numbers would we need to talk about? What kind of resources would he want? What sort of maybe philosophical differences might need to be resolved or whatever. So there's a lot that can happen quietly and behind the scenes here for a while. And as you point out, listen, I mean, could it get complicated or at least a little bit strange if Indiana went on some tear and went to the Elite Eight or the Final Four? I guess maybe. But as you rightly point out, many, if not most, if not all of these candidates that Scott Dolson's going to want to consider are almost certainly going to be playing into March themselves. Now, I think there is a bit of sort of like a second order conversation to have about the roster and the extent to which, while I know that there have been times when fans have been frustrated with probably every member of this team and for various reasons in different ways, you're still not going to want your head coach to have to come in and just remake the entire thing if they don't have to. So maybe there's some advantage in guys starting to play better, feeling a little rhythm, feeling comfortable again, and maybe everyone just being a little bit more open to the idea of coach is going to change, but hey, we're this is still what we can accomplish together in Indiana. But I think you start getting into conjecture and sort of subjective speculation there. I just think, I think that one of Scott Dolson's main goals here early in the search is just to let it play out in a way that does not distract from whatever this team does for the rest of the season. If that's make the tournament, everybody will be happy. They'll go on the trips. They'll be in whatever. I haven't even looked at the host cities. I know Indianapolis has a second weekend. I know Atlanta has a second weekend, but I haven't looked at the first round host cities. But if you're Indiana, you just right now, I think everyone sort of publicly and forward facing is just focused on trying to finish out the season with as much success and dignity and whatever as possible. And then if you make the postseason, I don't think it creates that much of a problem because, as you said, a lot of the people you'd want to talk to about the job are probably going to be in that postseason themselves as well.
Yeah, David lanes right into the next thing I was going to ask. I didn't think that there would really probably be anybody left roster-wise next season, but I'm wondering if guys like Bryson Tucker and Malik Renew don't possibly stick around. For one, I don't think that they'll make the NIL money anywhere else that they're probably getting at Indiana. But also Renew has been here for this. I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't know, but I'm just thinking of how that may be. Anybody else is probably going to be gone, whether it's the exhaustion of their eligibility or whatever the case is. But those are two guys that I see as possibilities of still being here. But that's just a complete, thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough to say because, listen, it's going to be up to the player. There's also an extent to which it needs to be up to the coach, and we're going to be moving into revenue sharing next year, which means there is a genuine extent to which coaches are going to need to think about this as a salary cap essentially, and you basically need to be able to look at players and say, I've got this much to allocate to this. We can't go over on this number without going under on this number. or whatever, you don't want to leave them too much to do. And you bring up players that are exhausting their eligibility. I mean, half the roster will just be out of eligibility
Right.
Come the end of this season. The other thing that I think is relevant is, and people aren't talking a lot about this, and I understand why, but as of right now, there's an expectation that the House settlement, which is what's going to lead to revenue sharing, will be settled in early April. I think the date is April 7th.
Yeah.
And my understanding of the NCAA's guidance around the forthcoming NIL clearinghouse, which is the sort of oversight body that the NCAA is going to require all NIL deals to flow through, and Deloitte is going to look at each one of them and basically apply a fair market value analysis and say either A, this deal is legitimate, it's above board, this is a fair market value for what this athlete is being paid versus what obligations they have to meet, whether it's sponsorship or, a commercial partnership, whatever. Or B, they say this is an inflated deal and they reject it. Now, there are a lot of people, smart people, who don't think this clearinghouse is going to last long, that it's just going to take, one or two deals getting rejected, someone suing and saying, you have no right to determine my fair market value, and then boom, it's all on pause, or maybe even, deep sixed. But for the moment, that is coming. And that means that, NIL dollars are going to have to start being justified to an oversight, sort of advisory body, if you want to think about it that way. My understanding of the NCAA guidance is NIL deals entered into before the House settlement is approved, assuming it's approved on April 7th, will not be subject to the clearinghouse next year, which means everyone is going to want to get NIL deals done by early April so that they do not have to go through the clearinghouse. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, that means they can just kind of continue with business as normal. The money can kind of keep going up. Number two is, if you can get, and we've seen teams do this with football already. If you can kind of get everybody on these NIL deals early on, then that gives you a year to watch how the clearinghouse works and to figure out, like, is it going to last? What's it going to require? How can we structure things to satisfy whatever those requirements are? I just bring that up because, anybody hiring a basketball coach out of the NCAA tournament is probably going to be up against kind of a tight deadline to try and get as much of the roster together before the House settlement's approved, assuming it is, so that you don't have to maybe tune down the NIL numbers, if you understand what I'm saying, at least for one more year. So there are considerations around rebuilding your roster where, again, it might be valuable to try and keep some of these guys simply because if they stay, then you can those are just boxes you can check as soon as the season's over. But you do want to leave at least some of that up to a new head coach. So it's I don't know. It'll be an interesting kind of conversation.
Yeah, and the Department of Education rescinded the 9-page letter they had sent out like a month ago that said that Title IX it will kind of not govern it, but it will have to be equally dispersed, and now that's been changed, which is rightfully so. That was just ridiculous. This is like business. I mean, in the world, where the money is generated probably is where the money needs to go back to keep feeding that machine, and that's how it's probably going to work out. Now, that will be I would assume, a boon to Indiana football. Because while they have increased the NIL for that program here greatly here recently under Kurt Signetti, this will be even another boost.
Yeah, I mean, remember that there are going to be other schools in the Big Ten that probably commit more money to football than Indiana, because Indiana is going to commit some of that to basketball. I expect Indiana to be, if not at the top, then near the top in the Big Ten in terms of money committed to men's basketball and the revenue share under the cap. Now, there are a couple considerations to this, because I think there are going to be some schools that add scholarships. And if you add scholarships, my understanding is basically if you add any additional scholarships over top of what's already there, that triggers a $2.5 million sort of scholarship pool that essentially is required to be carved out of your overall revenue sharing. If you want to think about it as like a cap of $20.5 million. And I don't, as of now, based on what I've heard, I don't expect Indiana to do that. I think Indiana is going to opt to basically just share all of this as straight revenue. So it will help football. But Indiana will probably maybe, shunt a little bit more of that money toward men's basketball than some other schools, which means that football is probably still going to want to lean into NIL to make up some of the gap. So, I mean, nobody's sure exactly like how all of this is going to no one's sure exactly how all of this is going to shake out. Like, I mean, it's going to feel at times, I think, like the early days of NIL, where everything was just a little bit chaotic and a little bit kind of Wild West. But it's still something that, in the end, I think, these are the most successful people in these sports are going to figure out how to make it work. And 5 years down the road, we're going to say, well, the formula was always there. They just kind of needed to develop it.
Yeah, Hoosiers for Good has gone away of sorts, but Hoosiers Connect, who was an offshoot of Hoosiers for Good, is still in place. So there's been a change to how Indiana is handling their NIL. The Hoosiers for Good was more big business, big donor, and used for charity crossovers. And I think that the players don't, not that they don't want to do that stuff. I don't think that they have to, be tied into doing something else, because what their sport is what they're doing for the NIL.
Well, there's some other pieces to that too. Number one, I think there's been a move by the IRS to start asking questions about whether or not the not-for-profit collective model is legitimate, and whether these collectives should keep their 501c3 status. And number two, I think you could still see, some opportunities set up with athletes, and charities, but this does go back to the fair market value part of it, which is you're still going to have to say, okay, if this athlete has an NIL deal with Habitat for Humanity, there still needs to be an illustration of or proof that they are doing enough to justify whatever the compensation number is in the NIL deal. And so just a lot of that stuff is, a lot of that stuff is just kind of, I think, just migrating more toward just kind of the business partnership, marketing, commercial partnership side of things. Not that it will ever go completely away. I think it's just a little bit different, I guess. And I think that you're going to just kind of continue to see this migrate more, if you want to think about it from Indiana's perspective, but this is a wider trend than just IU, migrate more toward things like Hoosiers Connect and away from things like Hoosiers for Good.
Zach Osterman, the IU insider for the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow. Be a subscriber. I am. Keep local papers alive. Zach, we'll see you at Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Thank you, as always. Before I let you go, someone was asking about your old Hartford Whalers pullover there, man. They have an affinity. Where did you get that, they asked?
Oh, it's I think 47 brand makes them. I have a couple. I have a Blackhawks one too. They're just really comfortable is mostly why I like them. They're just like big and oversized and like a thick sort of like cotton fabric. So like on a cold day, they're just very comfortable to wear.
And if you didn't see the logo, I would go with old style Seattle Seahawks on that. Looks on the colors. Bob Kravitz has an old Whalers hat that he wears a lot. But
yeah,
thanks, brother. Appreciate you as always.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim.
We've got more coming up here from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Indiana Sports Beat Radio rolls on. Back with more right after this. Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Marie Island, Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Marie Island, Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theuglygrouper.com for more information. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. I hope you had a great week, ready for a good weekend. Go get yourself some Hard Truth. Visit Hard Truth today, one of the Hard Truth restaurants, Big Woods restaurants, but main location there in Nashville. Great place to go. And boy, we cannot wait to get to spring when they got the outdoor live music going on and all kinds of good stuff. Earlier in the program, I was talking about NASCAR because Chase Briscoe from right down the road in Mitchell, Indiana, right there south of Bedford, a few miles, is on the pole for the Daytona 500, driving for Joe Gibbs. He replaced Martin Truex Jr. in the 19 Probast Shops car, and man, lightning fast he has been. But I bring up NASCAR again because, and I wish I would have thought to mention this to Todd Leary, that Michael Jordan is a team owner, a NASCAR team owner, along with Denny Hamlin. They own 23XI Racing, which has a couple of vehicles in it. But they, along with, I think it's Trackhouse Racing, another team, have sued NASCAR for antitrust situations, and it's NASCAR's a weird situation. It's owned and ran by the France family. That would be like a family owning the NFL. It's kind of odd. But then the day before yesterday, an hour before qualifications for the Daytona 500 were to start, NASCAR filed an appeal against 23XI and its Front Row Motorsports an hour before the qualifying. A 68-page appeal Wednesday night, arguing that a federal judge had erred in recognizing 23 Motorsports and Front Row as chartered teams for this season. And a charter is like a franchise. If you don't have a charter, you don't have a guaranteed spot, yada, yada. And those things are worth like $40 million a piece now. Nothing compared to a franchise of a pro team, but in essence of that. But now, so there's this, that's crazy. You got these lawsuits going on between them, and you've got an ex-superstar athlete as an owner, and Denny Hammond is the other owner, who is a driver for Joe Gibbs, teammate of Chase Briscoe. It's crazy. The land of NASCAR. It's like a soap opera, man. But that's I guess that's part of the draw, right? Who knows? But yeah, craziness going on there. So you got that going for you, which is nice. Last week we had the Super Bowl. This Sunday you've got the Daytona 500. Big event. Looking forward to that. Just kind of relax and chill out on a Sunday. Something good and fun to do. You've got high school basketball going on this weekend. If you're not going to the Indiana game, go check out a high school game. The girls are in tournament play. Boys are getting closer and closer each way through there. I've been having a discussion with one of the listeners on messaging about Indiana's football season next year. I think that they win a minimum of 9 games. Now, that's not being safe. Safe is to say they win 8 games, which is crazy. I think that it is a safe bet to, and last year I actually bet that Indiana would cover the wins total. I wish I had bet what, and I don't know who the guy was. I remember seeing it. The person bet $100, 110, that Indiana would make the college football playoffs. And that paid that dude $10,500. Whew. I wish I would have had the huevos to do that. But I think that a safe bet is 8 wins next year, 8-4. But I think that they go 9-3 at worst. But I really think they go 10-2. I think Indiana, because they have to, 3 games in, the first 3 games of those non-con games, nobody cares. But we'll talk some football on the other side. I know we got to take another break, but went so long with Zach that we blew right through those. But we'll be right back in 2 minutes from the Hard Truth Distilling Company right after these breaks. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. You're looking for... All right, we'll make it a short break that time. We just went too long with Zach, which is great. It was a great, fun conversation. Glad to do that. So we'll just jump back into it. But yeah, Indiana football next season. I was having this conversation, making a bet for charity, and 8 wins is... if they don't win 8 games, that will be a disappointment. And again, yeah, I know I'm talking about Indiana football, so I'm on one side going, wow, I can't believe that's a real conversation, but it is. I think that 9 games would be a solid season. Obviously, a 9-win season. They've never had one before last year, but their schedule ramps up. And one of the person I've been chatting with thinks it's an easy schedule. And I'm like, yeah, you cast away the first 3 non-con games, and then you get right into a Big Ten play against Illinois. Then you go back to Iowa and Oregon. That's not easy. And you play at Penn State. We'll see. But I think it'll be fine. Got the Indiana basketball game tonight against UCLA, the only game in the Big Ten. We'll have it all for you. Post-game chatter will be up on the YouTube channel. And by the way, even if you don't subscribe, just give us a like. The likes, just give the show a like. And for those of you that follow on Facebook and not YouTube, go to YouTube and find it there instead. But appreciate everybody, no matter what. It's been a great week, and we'll look to do it again on Monday. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.